Well, hi everybody. It's very surreal to be holding a microphone that doesn't make sound. But I think it works into what we're all talking about today. Things that happened and things we made up, which is sort of happening right now. So I suppose the work that you see over here is by a gentleman named William Keating. It's very much about my personal history, the history of my family, and particularly of the neighborhood and city that I grew up in, which is the Sunset in San Francisco. Represent Sunset. An amazing coincidence is that Mr. David Fullarton, to my left, lives in the shadow of Turtle Hill, where Mr. William Keating had his studio. That is just a coincidence. But it doesn't surprise me. I grew up as well in the shadow of Turtle Hill, one of the heights of San Francisco. It's a sand dune. It has some Monterey cypress at the top, and if you go there now, it's very well manicured with some native species. I wandering around those sand dunes as a youth, I discovered one day this underground studio full of work and strange objects and things, and it's been a number of years of me collecting and thinking about it. In one case, reproducing a potential object that he had thought about, which is this portable drawing desk you see over here. And if you reference the sketchbook, you can see some of his initial ideas of where that might come from. So, there's not a lot of information about him. I'm still discovering things about him every day, and he seems to be trying a lot of different things at once, and I encourage you to listen to the sound if you get a chance, take your time with the objects. I think that's about all I have to say.
I remember watching this show, for a years, and I got the impression that you were borrowing all those methods. Am I wrong? So I was looking at William Keating, not you, taking on William Keating's existence.
Right. I think that's a very apt observation that you have. I think with art in general, when there's a showcase of an artist, there's a certain kind of storytelling that usually takes place, and so I am generally not interested in that usual kind of storytelling about an artist, but I do love storytelling in general. And for me, storytelling comes from a place that involves much more personal or complicated origins, right, that maybe are about your family, about your place. And even history itself, is this kind of fact and fiction is really blurry. So I wanted to be a part of a certain kind of history and not a part of a different kind of history. Yeah. Alison Tharp, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, everyone. This is weird talking in a microphone with no sound. It's odd, but I do enjoy having the microphone. Hi. Thank you so much for coming out on this Sunday afternoon, everybody. So my pieces are on that back wall, and then there's one on this wall here. And my things that happened and things we made up was the theme. And I illustrated something that happened. I did not make this up. I was at the Castro Street Fair this last year. It was their 40th anniversary. And I have a special connection to the Wizard of Oz. One of our dear family friends, when I was growing up, was a huge Wizard of Oz fan. He was probably the first gay man that I ever met, and his apartment was immaculate, and his collection of the Wizard of Oz memorabilia was extensive. And I happened to be watching some drag queens performing the Wizard of Oz on stage during the day at the fair, and was inspired to create my show around that. So I took some photos with my iPhone, which I do often, of people on the street or in restaurants. Sometimes they don't know that I'm taking their picture. I use them in my paintings a lot, in my illustrations a lot. So I wanted to depict the joy that I witnessed with these. It wasn't a very good rendition of the Wizard of Oz. There was singing and dancing. A lot of it. There was a lot of glitter and interpretive outfits. Like, it was hard to tell who was who in the production, but I could tell Dorothy and I could tell the Tin Man, but it was vague. They were really, it was funny and sweet, and I took their pictures, and I just wanted to illustrate that day. The other painting that's on this wall is a kind of a larger interpretation of the entire day. I feel like it's accurate. I feel like it's exactly how it felt. I mean, there's people, there's raindrop people, there's glitter, there's flying things, there's cake, there's a lot of candy, and there's little hidden things in there that are just for me. But it was a beautiful day, and it was fun, and it was just simple and joyful and colorful, and I like sort of capturing a feeling rather than, I guess I can capture the feeling as the truth more than if I was to illustrate it exactly the way that it was. And that's exactly the way that it was when I was there. That's how it was for me. So I think in my drawings and my art, I try to capture more the feeling of the person than the way the person probably looks to everybody else. A lot of them are like cartoons, or, some of them don't even look like people, but their essence is pretty real for me. So that's it was just another day, but it was a day I'll never forget, that fair. So thank you. If there's any questions.
You're definitely a storyteller as well. I think all tell stories with your work, or personal narratives, or very human narratives. Alison's been doing a really fun show called Art World that streams live through the Compound website.
Oh yeah.
It's an hour of her making art, and she's telling stories the whole time.
Yeah, it's an hour of art making and storytelling. It's like a cooking show, but with art. It's like kind of like an infomercial sometimes, because I'm also trying to sell the art while I'm making it subtly. It's the unsale, So it's like it's Wednesdays at 6 o'clock. It streams live from our website, so you can see it, and it's also on YouTube. The already existing episodes. Okay. Lots of storytelling. A lot of weird art being made. A lot of stories being told.
Your work is sort of, I wouldn't say it's an idealization of people at all, but it's interesting that this is such a joyful day, and you describe it with candy and cookies, and yet there's a dark side to your characters, and they're like almost archetypal in some way, like they're talking about something else to me, Do you have a sense of some of the stories that are going around, the complexity and darkness of some of the characters that you draw, or are they just kind of coming out and like as this full essence of like multiple sides of one kind of character? I'm not sure that that's a good.
Yeah, I guess I try to make them, more realistic by having what's happening, but then going into the kind of a little bit more deeper into the character. If there's a dark side to it, it somehow makes it a lot funnier for me. It's about really making it funny. It's funny for me because it's like totally entertainment for me. That's basically why I make art. It's my entertainment, and I like to make fun of everything. And the dark stuff that's there is partly that, but I think it's just kind of true. Maybe it's what I interpret or I'm projecting, but in that picture that's pretty chaotic, there were some dark things that I saw that day too. there were some kind of tragic characters and there were some beautiful characters, but I think it's more honest if there's both sides. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. David Fullarton.
Thank you. This is very odd. Okay, I was going to try and do this. Is it on? Yeah, we're good. So weird. Yeah, out into the World Wide Web. I was going to try and do this without notes, but I'm going to let the side down and pull out the notes because I do. You know, it's just because I'm completely useless. I'm old and I'll forget what I'm talking about. And also, I hate doing this. Okay, I'm going to start with the title. I actually came up with the title for my sins. It was a phrase that I had in a book of phrases that are similar to this one, but it seemed to fit the show really well. There's 3 of us in the show. I had no idea what Liam and Alison were going to do, so it was a big, broad title. Things that we made up, things that happened. It pretty much covers a multitude of everything there. And it worked for me too because I just finished a show here last year, an apology show, and that show, my work was really kind of restricted, and I put a lot of self-made kind of restrictions on the work there, and it was very kind of straightforward, and everything kind of fitted into a certain way. And ever since that show, I'd been kind of just doing whatever I wanted to do. So I'd been kind of just putting out work that didn't really, it wasn't any cohesive, it didn't like tell a story or anything. So the title for me worked really well because it covered everything, and it seemed to pull it together even though it didn't make any sense really. Before we put the show on, Matt Lena asked us to do a little piece about what the work meant in the show. And I guess when I started to write that, I kind of realized that the phrase actually works really well with my work. I mean, my work, when you see it, is mostly about sort of text and images together, but I think it's also very much about fact and fiction and the way those two things come together to create a kind of sort of dislocated reality it's a story that you're telling that's neither fact nor fiction. It's just a kind of made up thing. But in a way, a lot of it's absurd and it's kind of silly, but I think there's also a kind of core of truth in a lot of that stuff as well. So it kind of like works really well with that whole idea of what's true and what's not true and all that stuff. And now I'm going to look at my notes because I've forgotten where I am. Yeah, I guess what I'm doing, we were talking about storytelling. I guess I am really kind of telling stories. To me, they're not stories that really make a lot of sense, and they're not really complete stories. It's kind of as if you're dropped into the middle of a story, and you kind of know something's happened before the picture, and you know something's going to happen after the picture. Usually something horrible is going to happen after the picture. And it's up to you to kind of join the dots and fit the pieces together. And so again, that's kind of the whole idea of like truth and what isn't true. And I guess that's kind of how life is. We kind of wander into things that we don't really understand halfway through and try and make the most of it and understand what is going on. And that's basically what this show is about. I mean, I think we all, the things that happen are also things that we tell stories about to ourselves. We look at what happens and we make sense of it by telling stories to ourselves about what happened. And I think that plays a big part in the work as well. That's kind of how we make sense of things, by telling ourselves stories, by making things up, by justifying what we've done and telling ourselves we're happier than we are or not as happy as we are. So I think that has a lot to do with the whole storytelling part of it. And now I'm running out of notes. A lot of this stuff, to be honest with you, a lot of this stuff is post-rationalizing. I mean, basically I just sit down and I put words and pictures together and hope that it works. A lot of the time stuff comes together and it's funny and I have no idea why it's funny and I don't really know what it means, but it works and I don't really want to know what it means a lot of the time too. I'm not very good in real life at telling jokes and funny stories, so I guess a lot of this is just me trying to prove to myself that I actually can tell a funny story in some way or other. And that's it, really. I'm not going to get rid of this thing.
No, not yet.
Okay, all right. Questions? No. All right. Anyone want to hear a joke? Yeah?
I know this isn't a critique, but I just want to say I think you've got a foolproof plan for making us laugh.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
going around these things again and finding out what you're going on. And I like what
It's nice to hear.
the images of these people in a way, because these monochromatic images of the people, if they were just those, good deal.
Yeah.
Expecting some psychosis or
Yeah. I mean, the thing for me is definitely is the words and the pictures together. The pictures on their own would kind of not really mean anything. I've tried to do pictures without words, but it doesn't really work. So I've given up. So, yeah. That's it. There's always I always try to get monkeys and sometimes gypsies too. Gypsies and monkeys. I know, and it's smoking. Yeah.
I am here today representing the SCML, which is Society Celebration, celebrating monkey love.
Oh, good.
What's your problem with monkey
I have no problem. I'm a bit scared of some monkeys. They can be quite scary, especially ugly monkeys. But I think it's because they're like tiny, they're like little humans, and they're really horrible and ugly. So they're scary. They're quite scary, I find. Sometimes have nightmares about monkeys and giant teddy bears, but that's a different story. Yeah.
Do you always work again, I sort of see this painting, basically, collages?
Kind of, yeah. Yes. I just since I started at the compound, I've started to do. Obviously, using text, the letterpress is perfect. So I've now been starting to do some letterpress stuff, and it's hard for me to work out how to get the images in there. But I've started to do sort of lino cutting and stuff like that. So I'm really enjoying that.
I actually meant print, like,
Oh.
for, like, writing.
Oh, like writing? Well, for a long time I've been a copywriter in advertising. Those dealer listings, but they're just a bunch of pictures inside them. There's not any writing. Oh, wow. Better get it while you can. Yeah. There you go. Well, I didn't do any writing in it though. That was just like it's just a bunch of. No, I mean I made a living as a copywriter for years, and I don't enjoy it at all. So, as a copywriter, yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, David's one of the only artists we've shown where raw pieces of cardboard stuck on the gallery wall. Like, usually we're totally curmudgeons about it. Like, oh, frame that. That was horrible. It's not presentable. But it's right.
I think there's something about your work in that way that you're like, oh, and it's dark work. Like, that might not work. And oh, that's really. Alison talks about this, and I recommend her show because she talks about this in her art making about not necessarily the accidents, but really just kind of trying things and kind of going with whatever happens. And I think your work approachable for the viewer to come to it and find their own things. And if there's something about your work, and I need to explore what's going on in your work a little bit more, but that I think invites us in. And you see people respond in your show as well, David, where people just like really chuckle at specific ones. So you're speaking to people in, they're bringing themselves to your work, and there's a relationship there, which is kind of wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you see in the gallery a lot.
Yeah, there's a very human element to all of your work.
Right. I mean, I guess that's what I was trying to say about putting forth some kind of truth within the absurdity of it all. I mean, it's just kind of like if you recognize a shared emotion in there, it's kind of like what it is. And I do think like the way Alison uses stuff and it's all kind of chucked in there. So that accidental thing, I mean, I kind of do the same thing, probably a little more controlled than yours, judging by dark world. But it's the same sort of thing. It's like, I think that does help when it's all a little bit accidental and just kind of, it looks like it's bunged together.
We all have some really beautiful prints as well in the print rack you can check out. Liam has some prints. Beautiful screen print pieces as well. Have any other thoughts on folks sitting up here in the schools? Any other like to ask David?
How did you do it?
Well, the sun prints over there. There, it's like you just put or I imagine that Mr. William Keating must have put something there on the paper. It's just cheap paper, and if you expose it to the sun, then it changes color. It took like I can tell you for certain, and it took a couple weeks. Yeah, it was unintentional until it became intentional.
You think you'll be exploring the works of Mr. William?
Yeah, there's a lot more to come from Mr. William Keating. So stick around, I'll be here all week. Tip your waitresses, try the salmon. Yeah, go to Tharp World, watch television.
Watch TV. On the computer. Oh, thank you. You're all welcome to go back there.
Cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. I guess we'll wrap it up. Thanks all for coming, and that concludes our artist talk. Feel free to hang out, enjoy some snacks, tea, coffee, wander through the studios, and get a good glimpse of the work before it goes away for a little while. Okay, thank you guys. Bye-bye.